the graduate financial aid and awards officer in the Faculty of Graduate and Postdoctoral Studies. And I'm going to present today with respect to, if I can get my screen to cooperate here, sorry. I'm going to present today on master's levels external scholarships and awards that you're able to apply for as a master's student. And I'm going to go over some federal and provincial funding programs that are available, and I'll explain the eligibility criteria to those competitions as well. I'm just going to double check with Elena. You can see my screen, the slideshow screen, and I'm good to commence the presentation.
I can't see the slide yet.
Okay, I had a feeling something might be happening. Okay, let me just double check here. So I want to share this one, and I'm going to hit share. There we go.
There it is.
I had a feeling it looked a little interesting there. So again, if you're just joining us, this session will be recorded. You'll have access to the slides after the presentation, as well as any answers to questions that may come up in the chat. Just put your questions in the chat as we go along, and I'll get started. Okay, so external scholarship presentation for this upcoming academic year. So I'm going to start out with talking about some federal funding agencies and some federal funding scholarship program. The Canada Graduate Scholarship Master's Program is one that is only open to those of you who are in a research-intensive master's program. So don't tune out those of you who are not in a research-intensive master's program, because I'm going to talk about some other opportunities that you will have that you're able to apply for. The federal funding agencies under the Canada Graduate Scholarship Master's Program are NSERC, the Natural Science and Engineering Research Council, SSHRC, the Social Science and Humanities Research Council, and CIHR, which is the Canadian Institutes of Health Research Council. So if you are studying something in your program that is either science related, social science and humanities, or health related, you would apply to one of these specific agencies that funds that type of research when you're applying for a CGSM award or scholarship, pardon me. Why would you want to submit an application to one of these? Well, they are worth a lot of money. They are $17,500 each for 1 year. It is non-renewable. If you hold one once, you're not permitted to apply and hold an award for the second year of your program, for example. Any applications that are coming in this fall for this program is for funding for the next academic year. So if you're currently in a 1 year research master's program, unfortunately, if you apply this fall, unless you're going to be in a program that you can kind of move this money towards, for example, a PhD. In the first year of your PhD, you could hold this award under certain circumstances. Then there's no point in applying this fall. If you're in a 2-year master's program, however, that is research intensive, it is a good idea to apply to this program, because you can hold this funding in the second year of your master's, right? So along with this $17,500, depending on what master's program you're doing your research in, you would be also eligible to receive some additional top-up funding. Often students either receive a $5,000 Dean of Graduate Scholarship award on top of their $17,500 CGSM award, or they could receive a $1,000 graduate incentive award for certain programs, as well as a teaching assistantship, which is also worth another $5,100, or actually it's a little bit more now. It's over $5,000. Additionally, if you are successful in this competition, you can apply for the Michael Smith Foreign Study Supplement, which is worth $6,000. It's additional money on top of the other monies that I just explained to do your research abroad at another institution where you find similar research interest, and a faculty member there who knows your faculty member, or where you can have them connect to agree that they would supervise you during your research stint at the university abroad. So this extra award would be in addition to the CGSM if you were successful. So I highly encourage you to reach out to me about the Michael Smith Foreign Study Supplement now that a lot of restrictions pertaining to travel have lifted. We've had several students in the past who have held a Canada Graduate Scholarship Masters, either with NSERC, SSHRC, or CIHR, apply for the Michael Smith Foreign Study Supplement, and they've actually gone to a place of their choosing, obviously with some coordination with their current supervisor, and did some research abroad, and it was a great experience. Okay, under the provincial government, there are two programs. The Ontario Graduate Scholarship Program is open to domestic and international students. It is also open to those students who are in a research-intensive master's program or who are in a coursework or professional-based master's program. Do keep in mind that because the OGS program, as well as the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship in Science and Technology program, which is obviously only open to those students who are in such programs that qualify, and only again with this one, domestic students. Because it's funded by, these two programs are funded by the province, you do have to be in a graduate program that is also OSAP eligible. So if your program is not OSAP eligible, then you would not be able to apply to OGS or QE2 as a result of your program not being eligible, not yourself. So there's some, eligibility criteria that you do have to check when you're applying for things prior to putting in your application. The OGS and QE2 are both worth $15,000 per year. This one as well is non-renewable, and you would have to apply every fall term when the application opens in order to be considered for an award again for the next academic year. So with external scholarships and awards, it does work in the way that you need to apply in the fall term ahead of when you are expecting to hold the award, because of what we call the adjudication process. So applications come in, they're downloaded, they're assessed and ranked and reviewed, and then awards are communicated to recipients in April, typically annually. So again, as I mentioned, the OGS is open to professional research master's programs, so coursework, MRP, or research intensive programs. And again, domestic or international students. The QE2, again, is only open to those students who are in specific science and technology programs, and for domestic applicants only. Okay, so again, why would you submit an application? It isn't just about the money, but it's also about recognition, right? By holding one of these awards, it's excellent to put these sorts of things on your CV. It shows that you are you have excellent academic excellence, excellent academic excellence, but that you are an excellent student, that you, if you're doing research, have excellent research potential. If you're not, then and you're doing just your program of study, it's still just as important, because it shows that you are a standout student, and it will help you down the line if you do decide to do your PhD or in other fields where you can show that you receive scholarships and awards, right? It also gives you great experience in preparing applications, honing in on your research methods, your writing ability, that sort of thing, and really thinking about what it is that you want to do, or why you're pursuing the graduate program that you are, and what you're going to do with it, and how it's going to benefit you. And so it's an excellent investment in yourself when you apply to these sorts of external scholarships, right? If you're eligible, you can apply to both. So I would highly suggest those of you who are in a research intensive master's program, and again, if you are in a 2-year program, this would benefit you to apply this fall to both the CGSM and the OGS competitions. If you are successful in both of the competitions, which happens sometimes, you do have to determine which one you would like to hold. Again, most students will go with the CGSM, since it's worth $17,500 over the OGS, which is worth $15,000. However, both are very prestigious awards. And then there's just some information there about how long you can actually hold external funding between the federal and provincial funding agencies, which is a maximum of 6 years combined. So if you're doing a 2-year master's program, right, and then going into a PhD, which is 4 years. Again, another note with respect to applications that are completed this fall for external scholarships, that they are for funding for the academic year that follows. Although if you are in your first year of your master's program doing a 2-year program and you apply this fall, you could start your external award as early as spring 2023, which is part of this current academic year. It just depends on whether or not you already hold another external award coming into your program, and that sort of thing. And we can discuss that if that applies to you. The other thing to note is that you do not need to be admitted to a graduate program at the time of application for external scholarships. And this is here, even though we're talking about master's scholarship programs, because if you're currently in a master's program and you know that next year you're going to apply to a PhD, you can actually apply for doctoral scholarship awards this fall term, so that even though you're just starting your master's, when you're done your master's, you've lined up funding for the first year of your PhD. So if you're in that boat and you're thinking about those sorts of things already, then you can reach out to me, or you might want to attend tomorrow's presentation at noon, which goes over the doctoral scholarship funding as well. So that would highly encourage you to do that if you do intend on doing your PhD next year, because you don't have to be admitted to a program. At the doctoral level, the funding is tied to the recipient, and you can it's portable, so you can either hold it at Laurier or another institution of your choosing in Canada if you choose to do your doctoral degree elsewhere. A lot of criminology students do that. They will often apply in the fall term, obviously for a doctoral program, scholarship program, because we don't have a PhD in criminology program at Laurier, for example. Okay, or there's other programs as well that fall into that boat. So some eligibility criteria. So pretty much for the QE2 and the OGS, the eligibility criteria is fairly similar. Although for the CGSM, you have to be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident, so it's only open to domestic students, which is not the case for the OGS. You need to be pursuing your first degree and not have completed X number of full-time months of your graduate study at the start date of your award. You do need that A- or 80 average in each of the last 2 years of full-time study or equivalent. So here's where things get a little bit complicated for people. It's very difficult to figure out, well, what are my last 2 years of full-time study? And really what we're looking for are, what are the last 2 terms you completed as of August 31st in the fall term of application. So we wouldn't be looking at fall term grades for any competition, regardless of when the application deadline is. Our OGS, for example, the deadline's a little later, end of January, and students will often get hung up on the fact that, oh gosh, I don't have any fall term grades from Laurier on my transcripts. I have to wait for them to appear. That's not the case. We're not looking at fall term grades when you apply to external scholarships this fall. So we do need a Laurier transcript to show that you're registered at Laurier, because the provincial and federal governments require that when you apply for a scholarship, and if you're awarded, they need to have that on file. But what we're looking at is your August 31st grades and prior. So spring term of 2022, winter term of 2022, fall term of 21. That would be your last year full-time study, whether you did full-time in fall 21 and winter 21 or 22, I apologize, and you didn't go in the spring term, that's fine. If you did some courses in the spring term, we would take those into consideration with your winter 22 and your fall 21, for example, for your last year of full-time study. And then again, the second last year would be your spring 21, winter 21, and fall of 19. Part-time terms are equivalent to a full-time term in that we use 2 part-time terms to make 1 full-time term, and we need at least 2 full-time terms to make a full academic year. Okay, so that's how we establish the eligibility for GPA and what we're looking at in terms of your registration to establish your GPA eligibility. And again, for this one, CGSM, it is a federal funded program for research intensive programs. So you have to have a significant research component to your graduate program in order to be eligible to apply. So you have to be eligible, as does your program. Okay, so some deadlines here. There is a national deadline. We don't have any say with respect to this deadline. You do need to have your application submitted by December 1st if you're applying to this one. Please note that your referees also need to have submitted their reference letters ahead of that 8 p.m. December 1st deadline in order for you to hit click and submit. So I would honestly let them know a couple days in advance of December 1st in terms of when you would like them to have their reference letter uploaded to your CGSM application. Every year we have several students, unfortunately, who go through all the trouble of doing their application, but unfortunately their referees were not aware that if they didn't have the application or their part done by a certain time and date, that the applicant can't submit. And that is honestly up to the applicant, right, to let their referees know everything about, hey, I'm applying for this. here's the deadlines. However, could you make sure you get your reference letters in for me by this deadline so I can make sure I go over everything prior to submitting so that I know that I've done everything that I was supposed to do in order to be considered for this scholarship. So just make sure that you're, paying attention to the deadlines and what needs to happen in order for you to hit that submit button. Okay. The official transcripts are required for this competition. Again, if you're a new Laurier student, or if you're, did your undergrad here at Laurier and you're just in your first term of your of your master's, this fall term, you still need to get a Laurier transcript, an official transcript, to show registration in your program at time of application for this competition. Okay, so that's important to note. There's some information on our website with respect to if you're going to ask for an official electronic copy of your Laurier transcript, how you need to go about getting that into your hands, because you as the applicant have to upload that to your application, but official transcripts in electronic format are not sent directly to students, but they can come to myself and then I can forward that to you to provide to you for your application, which, since you have to upload it yourself. And that information is on our website, on our external scholarship and award website. Again, results for this are released April 1st, and some information in terms of how these things work. The federal funding agencies calculate quotas for institutions for the Masters Canada Graduate Scholarship Masters program, and how that works is that they take into consideration past scholarship holders, so students who have held money from the funding agencies, as well as faculty members who hold research grants from those funding agencies. And so the numbers are calculated based on those sorts of that sort of information. And so at Laurier, we have a health research allocation of 1 award. So regardless of how many students apply through the adjudication process, what that means is that we can award 1 health research award to our applicants. For NSERC, that science, the hard sciences side of the funding agency, we have a quota of 4, so we can award 4 awards. And for SSHRC, which is the social sciences and humanities, that one is to be determined. It was 21 last year, but it's not posted yet. So we'll keep you informed as to what that quota is when it changes. And so a couple things you should know about this particular competition. Most scholarship applications are always looking for, because it's scholarship, it's based on merit. They're looking at grades. How have you done, throughout your undergrad, and your research potential, which is something they can garner from how you've written your proposal, right? Your research proposal, as well as your reference letters. Your referees are a great voice in your scholarship applications. I highly, highly suggest that you provide your referees with as much information as you possibly can, even provide them with a bit of a cheat sheet in terms of your accomplishments, give them your CV, ask them to highlight specific things that you might not be able to include in a CV, such as perhaps you have a conference coming up that you're going to present at, or a publication that's waiting to be accepted and published, that sort of thing, because you shouldn't be saying those sorts of things in your CV, but your referees can speak to those things to highlight the progress that you you're having in terms of your research potential at this stage in your academic career. So I highly suggest that you talk to your referees and give them some extra information that you think should be included. And again, the last bit is on personal characteristics and interpersonal skills. So that's the information they're going to garner from your CV or your resume. And so make sure you put as many extracurricular activities, leadership experiences, that sort of thing in your CV, which is a component of the Canada Graduate Scholarship Masters application. Anything that you've done in terms of work experience is also very important, no matter where it has been at in terms of your working. The last thing on the CGSM competition is just making sure you're applying to the correct agency. So if your research falls on the fence, if you will, in terms of social science, but it's also got a health aspects to your research, then make sure that you're discussing it with your supervisor as to which agency you should be applying to. There's also a link you can check out to help you define where your research falls, if you will, or you can come to me and ask questions as well. It is important to make sure you're applying to the correct funding agency, because if you submit an application to, let's say, SSHRC, but it's very health oriented, unfortunately, SSHRC does not fund health research. And we're talking biomedical research, right? And anything that will disseminate into human health research, it will be under the Canada Institutes of Health Research that you should be applying if that's where your interests lie. And do keep in mind as well that students often get very apprehensive about applying to these sorts of competitions because they're not sure right now. You know, you're just getting into your first semester of your master's program, and you might not really have your research proposal together in your head, or you know what it is that you're going to do exactly. It's a proposal, so it's not something that we're going to in essence, hold you to if you don't do exactly what it is that you've outlined in your proposal. So what I highly suggest is that you do a little bit of digging in terms of what is it that, you know, your supervisor is doing, what kind of research, you know, look at their biography on the website, take some pointers in terms of, you know, what sorts of things you should be talking about in your proposal, do some lit review, that kind of thing. And it's only a one pager. So, you know, put together a nice, concise research proposal as per the formatting instructions for this competition, and you can get some feedback, you know, from other people that you're doing your master's with, have them read it over, help each other out, bring it to the writing center. They're excellent in with looking at research proposals and helping for scholarship writing purposes itself. So I would highly suggest you use those sorts of resources. And making sure that you're not using lots of jargon as well, right, when you're writing a research proposal, because you want to make sure that those people who are not in your discipline understand what it is you're researching or what you're proposing to do in your master's. Keep in mind that, you know, if you're in psychology, for example, there are individuals on our selection committees at the institutional level who are from kinesiology or who are from social work or geography, who also do, let's say, social science research as you might be doing in psychology. And so if you're using terminology that is not known to those who are not in your discipline, it's very difficult to read and follow what it is you're saying in your proposal. So just be careful of those sorts of things. We highly suggest, you know, doing things like sending your friend your research proposal. Hey, can you read this? You don't really know what I'm doing. You're not in my discipline, but do you understand it? And if they understand it, then you've done a great job. Okay, so there's a good way to go about that, or your parents, or you know, anyone you can think of who isn't in your field of study. And that's that for that slide. I'm going to move forward here if this thing lets me. There we are. And I tell you, sometimes I think that this program wants you to pay for it. So it acts up a little bit when you try to change your slides, so that you get frustrated and pay a subscription as opposed to using the free version as I am today. So I'm just going to motor through here to where I was at, and we're going to talk a little bit next about the Ontario Graduate Scholarship Competition. Okay, let's try this one more time. Here we go, right slide. Okay, so changing gears, I initially started out talking about the Canada Graduate Scholarship Masters, talked briefly about OGS and QE2, and now I'm going to give you a little bit of the insight on the information for this program. So this one, again, is open to all students, domestic, international. And again, if you're in a research intensive or non-research intensive program. So if you're, you know, in MBA, if you're doing a master's in English and you're not, you know, you're doing the MRP or communication studies and you're doing the MRP co-op, that sort of thing. I highly suggest that you look into this program and applying for this one as well. The QE2, as I mentioned a few times, the science programs, and you have to be a domestic student in order to be eligible. This one is also looking for an A- or 80% average in each of the last 2 years of full-time study or equivalent, which I explained with the CGSM. So they have the same GPA eligibility criteria. Again, only grades up to the end of August 31st in the year or in the, you know, as of the fall term of application are determined, used to determine your GPA eligibility. This might sound weird to say this because you're here at Laurier doing your master's. However, again, for those of you who know that you're going to be doing a PhD next year and maybe you're in a one-year master's program, each institution actually has its own OGS application. Might have a different application deadline, that sort of thing, because it's administered and adjudicated within the institution. So you would need to go to the other institution's website to look at what their OGS or QE2 competition deadlines are, what is their application requirements, all of those sorts of things if you are applying to hold an OGS at another institution. For the CGSM competition, it's different. You go to the Tri-Council's research portal, you fill out your application, and you can indicate what institutions you want to look at your application. And so only those institutions you indicate will actually receive your application data from the funding agency's research application portal. With OGS, it's the institutions that have their own application system, if you will. Okay, so for Laurier, our OGS and QE2 deadlines are as follows. So it's going to open early October 2022. Not sure of the exact date yet because we're trying to work through maybe making it a little bit easier for applicants this particular year. And if it works, we'll continue to do so. It will close sometime late January, maybe early February, depending on how this application process might be revised. For this one, unlike the CGSM that requires official transcripts only, this one we will accept official or unofficial transcripts, meaning you can log into Laurier and you can do a snapshot of your registration for the fall term and any subsequent terms at Laurier, and you can provide that with your and upload that to your OGS application, and we will accept that as your Laurier unofficial transcript. If you've come from another institution and you have a student-based system where you could call up your grades, you can also use your unofficial transcripts from there and include them with your OGS application as well. For those of you who will be applying to the CGSM and who will be having to request official transcripts from either Laurier or another institution, you can use those same transcripts to upload to your OGS application and just submit that with your OGS and you're good to go there as well. Okay. Again, keeping in mind that if you don't have any grades on the fall term at Laurier, it doesn't matter. You need to have an up-to-date and you need to have an official or unofficial transcript for the OGS showing or QE2 showing your fall term registration, right? Results are released in early April for this one as well. And we don't have the quotas for Laurier for the upcoming competition for this competition, sorry. Last year we had a quota of 62. Actually that was 61, so 2 of which were for international students and the other 59 awards were for domestic students, and for the QE2 we had a quota of 2. And again, what quotas mean in terms of how many awards the agencies permit you to allocate and fund for your successful award recipients. Okay, so regardless of how many people apply, there are only so many awards to go around. Okay, so for the OGS and QE2, how is your application assessed? Whether you're in a research intensive or coursework or MRP stream master's program, we're still looking at 60% on your academic excellence and past accomplishments. So we're going to be looking at your transcripts, your academic background, any previous awards or scholarships that you might have held, and your departmental ranking. So how these competitions work is that the programs have a say in terms of all the students who have applied, let's say in the MA psychology program for OGS or CGSM, we're going to rank them in terms of how we think, who is the most meritorious and so on and so forth. And then the institutional selection committee looks at psychology's rankings along with kinesiologies, along with geographies, along with social works and so on and so forth. And then they determine out of all of the programs which students will actually receive the awards. So that's the sort of thing you're looking at when I'm talking about departmental rankings. The other component of the OGS assessment of your overall application is 40% based on your research ability or your future potential. So if you're talking about why you're you're in this program. I'm in a non-research intensive master's program, and why I'm in this program, what it's going to do for me, that sort of thing. Your academic training in the program, right? Relevant work experience, all those sorts of things are going to be taken into consideration. And I know often students who are in non-research intensive programs feel, oh goodness, I don't know if I'm going to stand a chance against other students who are in a research intensive program for this competition. And I say that you do. So apply. We have lots of students who are in the social work program, who are in other MRP or coursework-based programs, who are excellent standout students. And it's all about, your reference letters, putting together a strong statement of interest in your program, and of course your transcripts, that sort of thing, that are also going to speak well to your your academic excellence and why you should be funded, and that sort of thing. So I highly suggest you apply, because you don't have a disadvantage at all. Okay. All right. So our deadlines for, did this go backwards on me again? It sure did. Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, so a few things you should know just in general in terms of scholarship applications when you're applying to an external funding agency. There are also other opportunities that you can apply to with respect to external funding agencies that are on our website. There's, I'm going to speak to that in the next slide, but there are also they usually have commonalities with respect to what they're looking for in a scholarship application. So usually they have some application form where they're gathering general information about you as the applicant. Of course, they're going to ask for official transcripts, and in some cases they'll allow unofficial, like Laurier's OGS competition. And that is just, have a look at how you've done over the last several years with your academic history, as well as what your registration status is, your references. That sometimes can make or break your application. So I highly suggest, when you're asking somebody to be a referee for your scholarship application, that you ask if they're able to produce a strong reference for you. And if they hesitate and seem a little bit, well, I'm not sure if I know you well enough, I don't know if I can really do a good job for you, then I would suggest you try somebody else. You really want to have somebody who's going to speak highly of you. You could approach it where if you came from a program where you really didn't get to know a lot of your professors overly well, but you have a couple in mind, provide them with as much information as possible and say, okay, having this information and knowing a little bit more about me after we have this conversation, do you feel you can provide me with a strong reference letter for the scholarship competition, and go from there as well? That's another way to approach it. But you do want to make sure that you choose wisely and ask early. You're not going to be the only person asking them for a scholarship reference letter or for an application of admission, right? So that stuff is going on in the fall and into January as well, where students are applying like you did as well, to master's programs or doctoral programs. And so they're going to be very busy writing a lot of reference letters. So make sure as well your research proposal, if you happen to be writing one, is clear and concise. It's realistic. The timelines are feasible. If you're in a 2-year program and you're saying you're going to do all these things that are going to be too overwhelming and really are meant for somebody who's doing, a 4-year PhD, it's not going to bode well for you. So make sure you're being realistic. Again, 2 references are required. The CGSM will require a CV or an academic resume. The OGS requires just a research statement, a program of study statement if you're not doing that research component, and the QE2 OGS application does not require a CV. So this is where I say, again, ask your referees to be that voice for you in your OGS application or QE2 application, because you have to write your statement of interest or proposal. You give a little bit of information in terms of what past awards, scholarships, publications, conferences you've attended. And really, aside from that and your transcripts, you don't get to highlight your yourself or things that you have going on in terms of maybe conferences that you might be attending or anything like that. So make sure you ask your referees to speak to that in their letters, and that will help the committees have a better overview of your potential as a student and why you should be funded. Okay, so as I mentioned, other scholarships and awards. there is the general student profile. So Laurier has a number of internal funds that they award in the way of scholarships, awards, and or bursaries. We're going to talk a little bit more, more so on the scholarships and awards. You do need to complete your general student profile. It is accessible via Laurier. So when you log into your Laurier account, you should have a general student profile tab on top with all of the student services, you know, your employment, that sort of thing. And you should be able to click on general student profile, and then you can get that started. It is a very long profile. There are a lot of questions. The reason being is that they have a lot of different, I guess if you want to be, just make it easier, pots of money that are coming from various donors. And the donors have decided, you know, specific terms and conditions to whom they wish to award this money to. And so the institution is asking questions to pair up and try to flag, if you will, which students, undergrad and graduate, because this general student profile is for all students, they're trying to match up who is an eligible candidate for these different scholarship and award pots of money that they have. So again, do be patient. It is very important to fill out because it is for money for this current academic year. So I'm sure most of you are waiting going, oh gosh, is there anything available for this year? Well, there is. You need to do the general student profile though to be assessed for those ones. So please complete that. The deadline to complete it is October 5th. You will be receiving an email from the student awards team via Service Laurier with respect to some information if you're eligible for specific awards, and they'll give you instruction as to how to do the next steps. There's also faculty specific awards and monies that are available if you're in an MBA program, for example, or in social work. Again, so I would highly suggest that you apply because there's not always it's not always just based on merit. As I mentioned, there's scholarships, which are based on merit, and awards, which are monies that are given to individuals who fit specific criteria. And it's not at all necessary, not at all, you know, hinging, sorry, on your GPA or academic success in the past. Okay. The Ontario Women's Health Scholars Award is another great competition you might consider applying for, as well as the Autism Scholars Award, as both of those imply if you're doing research in women's health or autism research, then you can check those out and apply. They're worth over $20,000 each, those scholarships. There's also the William Lyon Mackenzie King Memorial Scholarship. That one's a little bit different. It's worth about $8,500 for the open, or the traveling scholarships a little bit more. It is highly competitive because across Canada, there are only a few awards, and all the students from every institution in Canada are open are invited to apply if they are eligible. The other thing that I want to point out is this website right here, Graduate Funding and Awards. That's our main page that has a list of the various different external scholarships and awards, as well as some other non-merit based opportunities that you can check out. I highly suggest as well that you check out scholarshipcanada.com. So scholarshipscanada.com, which is on that webpage as well. You have to create a profile. You can filter, you know, what you're looking for in terms of scholarships and what your program is, whether you're part-time, full-time, that sort of thing. And then they will match you up and provide you with emails saying, hey, you might be interested in applying for this, or you fit based on your filters, you know, you said you were interested in this sort of thing, you might want to check out this funding opportunity. So it's a great resource as well. You will know that through a lot of what I've been talking about, most times you do need to be a full-time student in order to apply for the external scholarships that I've been speaking about. The general student profile is open to part-time students, full-time students, domestic students, and international students for funding that is available for this year. So again, that one's open to everyone, regardless of your registration or citizen status. And I'm going to move on. I think that is all I can say about that information there. And that concludes the presentation. So the last slide just has some contact information. fgps@wlu if you have some general inquiries about anything with respect to your funding package or your program. Of course, you can also reach out to your graduate coordinator for your program, your graduate administrator, if you know who that is, your supervisor as well, myself, and please take advantage of the scholarship writing workshops, or even for other writing supports. The scholarship writing services, or they are the writing services now. Staff are absolutely amazing, and they are often those who have been through graduate studies themselves, have held external awards, so they know what they're doing, and they are excellent source of support. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And I see that there are about 19 questions in the chat. If we don't have time to get through them all, as I mentioned, I will make sure that you have access to the slides that I've used today. And Alina will post those and provide a communication to everyone with respect to where that you can find that, as well as the answers to any questions that have come into the chat. I'll look through the chat right now and go through a few of the questions, since we have a few more minutes here. If I can access this, is it going to let me, or would you like to say the questions, Elena, and then I can just
Yeah,
answer?
I'm happy to.
Great. Okay, thank you.
So right at the beginning, and maybe this has been answered, can you identify if you have to be a part-time or full-time grad student for some of the awards?
Yeah, so definitely for the external scholarships that I spoke about, you do have to be a full-time graduate student to apply, unless you have an accommodation whereby you're actually registered part-time, for the fact that you need to be registered part-time in order to progress through your program. And if you have a circumstance like that, then you can definitely reach out to me, and I can see if you would fall under the eligibility criteria for OGS and CGSM, the federal and provincial funding agencies.
Awesome. So for one-year programs, are they also eligible, seeing as a lot of these you're applying this year for next year?
Right. Absolutely. And so unfortunately, if you didn't catch wind of these sorts of opportunities in the fourth year of your undergrad, which is unfortunate that a lot of students don't, you would have had to apply in the fall term of the fourth year of your undergrad in order to secure funding for the 22-23 academic year. So really applying this fall to OGS QE2 or that Canada Graduate Scholarship Master's Program would be beneficial only for those who are in a 2-year research intensive program, or for those who know that they're going to be going into a PhD next year starting fall term. You can apply for OGS and also for the doctoral competitions. But the general student profile is for this year. Okay, so make sure you fill that one out for any internal scholarships and awards.
Perfect. And we had two similar questions, that it's kind of the last 2 years of full-time study that's going into your average, correct? Whether that be like a bachelor's or whatnot.
Yeah, so we would be looking at the last 2 years of full-time study or equivalent. So again, if you did some part-time terms in there, we'd take 2 part-time terms to make 1 full-time term. We need 2 full-time terms to make an academic year, but really we're looking at spring 22, winter 22, fall 21 as your last year, and then spring 21, winter 21, and fall 19 as your second last year, if that helps.
Okay. And how many references are needed for CGSM?
2. So 2 for OGS QE2 and 2 for CGSM.
And can they be academic, professional, personal? Is there a preference, or?
So they should be academic. However, there is some language on the CGSM portal with respect to if you are going to use somebody who is more of a professional reference, there are some criteria that they must meet in order to be acceptable by the Tri-Council. So it's not the institution saying no, it's the rules of the scholarship competition. So it would be best to consult the information they have there in terms of the referees for that program. So they should be academic. However, there is an exception if they fit the particular criteria as per the Tri-Councils for non-academic referees. For OGS, it should be academic in nature, Although, again, if you have an issue, we can speak about that. Just email me and we can talk about what the issue is in finding academic referees. Sometimes people come back as a mature student, and I understand it's very hard to go back to somebody, you know, hey, I was an undergrad 10 years ago. Do you remember me? Do you want to write me a reference letter? So we can talk about that if you have questions about who to ask if you're having difficulty finding academic referees due to some circumstance similar to that or otherwise.
Awesome. So I'm not sure if you answered this. Is CGS only for research-based graduate programs, or are placement
Yes.
students eligible as well?
No, CGSM, the federal funding agencies, they're research agencies. So you have to be in a research intensive program in order to apply for CGSM. The OGS or QE2 is the program, or OGS in particular, that is open to students who are not in a research intensive program.
Okay. And sorry, another reference, I tried to group them all together. Can your
That's
current
okay.
supervisor be your reference?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
And then for students who may be international students who received a bachelor's from outside of Canada and their transcript may be non-English, should they get that assessed by a third party in order to apply, or is that kind of figured out by the funding agencies?
Yeah, so actually it would be figured out by our office. And so we do receive international transcripts all the time and are able to do an equivalency. So you can just include your international transcripts with your scholarship applications and we'll figure that out for you.
Okay, we just had 3 more questions come into the chat, and then I think we're almost caught up if we have time. Does the timing of co-op terms impact scholarships?
Good question. So yes and no. With the CGSM, students are permitted to take their CGSM installment because, of course, when you receive your award, it's split over fall, winter, spring, or if you're a returning student who receives it, you can do spring, fall, winter. If one of those terms happens to be a co-op term, you can choose to wait to take the installment till you come back, or we can disperse it onto your account while you're on a co-op term. It is permitted by the federal funding agencies. OGS is a bit of a different story. So that one would have to be until you're registered again full-time.
Okay. Are there any scholarships for mature students? It's been a while since I've completed my undergrad, so applying this year and not having like current references and contacts obviously could be challenging. This might be kind of a personal connection.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're open to everybody to apply this fall. If you feel that you aren't able to get reference or referees in time, I mean, December 1st is the deadline for the CGSM and January is the deadline for OGS. So it may very well be that, you know, this fall term, you work really hard at standing out and, getting some of your fall term instructors to know who you are and your abilities and that sort of thing. And then you go after them for reference letters. If that's not feasible, then I mean, again, it is what it is. You do need to provide 2 referees for the scholarship competitions or applications, sorry. But for the general student profile, you don't, of course, right? You're just applying and answering a bunch of questions with respect to your financial needs, your current living situation, what program you're in, all these sorts of questions, lots of information you're providing there, and they're assessing you for a variety of different funding opportunities.
Okay, awesome. And I think lastly, if your program itself is part-time, so like for instance, the part-time MSW, would you qualify for OGS?
Unfortunately not, because it is a part-time program and that's a ministry rule where again, it's only open to full-time students. The only circumstance under which the provincial or federal funding agencies will permit a recipient to hold an external award under their programs at part-time registration status is if there is a reason for the student to be part-time due to a disability or medical reasons, right? Or family situations, these sorts of things. So that we can talk about that if you have a specific situation. But if it's just because you happen to be in a part-time program, then unfortunately it's not, you're not eligible to apply to these ones.
Okay, and one more question came in. Does the general student profile need to have different activities and experiences each year?
No, so if you're saying if you're filling it out again from having filled it out before as an undergraduate student, for example, you can put the same information in there. It's not a problem. And now you're going to be assessed as a graduate student for those graduate student opportunities as opposed to from the undergraduate opportunities. So it's completely fine.
Okay, awesome.
Info. Yeah. Okay, so we can stop there. And what we can do is, if you have any additional questions, I'm not sure if you can grab my